new friends. I'm Lina, lead designer at Annie's, and I'm giving you a warm welcome to this quick stitches and tips episode of Annie's Creative Studio. Today we will have lots of fun knitting hair scrunchies. Yes, they are back again and they're more popular than ever. What really makes me so excited about scrunchies is that they are so easy to make. You can even be a beginner and you can use up your scraps, and not to mention that they make great gifts. If you're not a member of Annie's Creative Studio yet, you can sign up to start watching and to download patterns for free today. For the scrunchie I will demo today, there is actually not a pattern, and that's how easy it is. So just join me and I will show you everything you need to know how to make a basic knit scrunchie. You will need a ball of yarn in a size ranging anywhere from a sport weight to a worsted weight yarn. Then you will need an elastic, approximately 8 inches long. You will need knitting needles, and I was using size 10 6mm when I was working with the worsted weight yarn, and I was using a size 8 5mm when I was working with the sport weight yarn. You also need scissors, you need a tape measure, and you need a darning needle. So I will be using this worsted weight yarn here today for my sample, and I am working back and forth on regular straight needles. So first off, we're going to start by casting on stitches. So make sure to leave a longer tail and then start by making a slip knot. So I will twist the yarn into a little loop and then reach into that loop and bring up the working yarn so that you create this little slip knot that is adjustable. And then put that loop on your needle and tighten. And now, having these two strands, the tail and the working yarn, I grab them with my hands like this, and then I take my thumb and index finger and I run them through between those two strands, just like this, from the top and down, and then I flip my hand to open up. So my grip now looks like this. Then I take my needle tip and go under the first strand and go over and pick up the strand on my index finger and then pull it back through that loop and up, and then let go of the loop around your thumb, tighten it, and get a new grip of that yarn again. So this is called a long tail cast on, and that's the way we're going to cast on our stitches. So again, underneath the first strand, go and grab the yarn on your index finger, pull it through the loop and up. So several of you might already be familiar on how to cast on stitches, and you could just continue, but I'm just going to show this slowly a couple of more times. So holding on to the yarn here in the middle of my hand, and then go under, wrap the needle around and go through the loop and up again and tighten. Under, grab the yarn, go through the loop and tighten. So for the skinnier yarn, for the smaller scrunchie, I cast on 10 stitches. For the chunkier yarn, the worsted weight, and the larger scrunchie, I cast on 20 stitches. So anything in between there would work, depending on the size you want on your scrunchie. So let's just cast on a couple of more stitches here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10. So say you have the number of stitches that you want, let go of the tail, and you have your working tail as you want to begin. So Move the needle over into your left hand. Put the working tail around your index finger and hold on to the rest of it in the palm of your hand. And then grab your second needle. And now we're going to just work the knit stitch. So to work the knit stitch, you go into the front loop of the first stitch, wrap the working yarn around, and then pull it through the stitch and lift off. Into the front loop, yarn over and pull it through the stitch and lift off. So this is the way we're just going to knit all the way across our stitches. So you just keep knitting, 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 and also into your last stitch. So for the very basic scrunchie, we are just going to keep repeating this row over and over again until we reach about 20 to 22 inches long band of fabric. So to do so, you turn around and then again yarn around your index finger, go into the first stitch, yarn over and pull through the stitch, and keep knitting all your stitches all the way to the end of also this row. So when you knit every row like this, it's called garter stitch. And with garter stitch, you get a little bit of a bumpy, thicker fabric, just like the one fabric we have on the bigger scrunchie. So this is what it's looking like after 2 rows finished. And you keep turning and you just keep knitting back and forth just like this. So I will keep knitting and I will meet you in a little bit to see what it looks like once we have got a little bit of progress on our work. So I've been knitting back and forth for a few more rows here now, and as you can see, my fabric is starting to grow. So by knitting across back and forth, this is the look of the fabric that we're getting. You can see all these ridges and bumps from our knit stitches, and it looks the same on both sides. So this is what it's going to look like when you just knit on every row. But if you want the smoother surface that we are having on the smaller scrunchie, then I'm working in a texture called stockinette. That means that we are knitting on our right side rows and then purling on our way back on the wrong side rows. So I will now show you the purl stitch. So for the purl stitch, you move the working yarn in front of work like this. Then you go into your stitch from the front and through to the back, and then wrap that working yarn around your needle and pull it through and lift off. So again, into the stitch, wrap the yarn around the stitch, pull it through and lift off. Go into the stitch. I'm going to hold my finger in a different position to show you better. Go into the stitch, wrap the yarn around the needle and pull it through. So there are different ways to work your purl stitch. In the end, it's going to come out the same, that you're working from the front of the stitch, you're wrapping the yarn around the needle and you're pulling it through the stitch and then lifting it off. So this is the purl stitch, and I will just purl all the stitches all the way across. And as you can see on the back, it's still the purl stitches creates these little bumps. But if we now turn to the right side, you can see how these stitches actually turns out very smooth seen from the right side. So now when we keep alternating knitting on this smooth side, we're going to knit all the stitches across just like we did before. We're just going to create this now smooth fabric. So as you can see now, by knitting across here on the right side, I keep adding to this smooth surface. So then we'll turn around and we are on the back again. So here on the back bumpy side, we will be purling across. So again, working yarn towards you, go into the front of the stitch and then wrap the yarn around your needle and pull it through the stitch. And also for this first stitch, I usually try to tighten it a little bit so we don't get this sloppy, loose edge stitches. And then just keep purling all the stitches all the way across this row. So by alternating knitting and purling every other row, we are creating a fabric called stockinette stitch. So seen from the right side, you can see how stockinette gives us this smoother surface, and this is garter stitch. So now you could just choose which fabric you like the best for your scrunchie and keep working till your strip measures approximately 20 to 22 inches. And I'll meet you there and I'll show you how to bind off. So I've been working in stockinette here, a strip in the skinnier yarn, and this now is ready to be bound off. So I have 10 stitches on my needle and I'm going to bind them off loosely. So to bind off, I'm going to do this here from my knit side of work. I will knit the first stitch, then I will knit also the second stitch. And now when I have 2 loops here on my right needle, I will take the left needle tip and go into the first one of them and then simply slip it over the second one. So now I'm back to having 1 loop on my needle, and I'll go into the next stitch and I'll knit it. Make sure to be a little loose, and then again slip that first one over the second one. And this is what we're going to repeat all the way across. You knit the next stitch, slip the first over the second, you knit the next one, slip the first over the second, and just keep repeating this all across the number of stitches you have for your scrunchie band. So we'll just keep working like this, binding off stitch by stitch. And I just have a few left here now, and then slip it over. And also the last one, knit into the last one and slip the first over the second. And here I'm now left with 1 stitch on my needle. So bring in the scissors, and at this point you can leave yourself a long tail so that you have something to sew it all together with before you fasten off. So once you cut that tail, you can just pull it through that last loop like this, and that secures it. And we have now bound off all the stitches, and we have this strip here now that we're going to seam together into our scrunchie. So first thing I do, I will fold the fabric double with the wrong sides facing each other, and then I'll take this tail that I had started with and I'll just put it on a little wool needle, tapestry needle. And then I am just going to whip stitch these together. So as you can see, you have your line of stitches on both sides here, and I will be seaming in the outer loops to create as little of a seam as possible. So find your first loop on this side and go into the loop on the opposite side and pull the the yarn through. And then I'm going to hold here so that I see my opening. I find the next loop and then the next loop over on this side and just seam through. Then next loop and next loop. So this is called whip stitching, and I'm just going to seam in every single loop and make sure that I go into the loop on the opposite side until I have seamed the whole strip together. So I'm coming to the end here now, seaming the last stitches together here at the top. So now when I've seamed this whole thing together, I have this long tube. So before I seam the short ends together, we are going to run the elastic through it. So just take your needle out for now, and then grab that elastic, approximately 8 inches long, and then start scrunching your fabric together just as much as you can. So getting it all super scrunched up here so that I have the little hole here in the center, and then I'll take the elastic and I just push it through the hole in the center. And now when I have the two tails out, I will just tie these together really tight. You can choose if you want to seam them together or if you want to even put some glue on them, but I believe that even by making a little bit of a double knot here, it will be secure. It's not going to go anywhere. And then just spread the fabric out all the way around the elastic. Make sure you have all the fabric facing out like this. And now I still have my tail here, so I will put the tail back on my needle and just find these beginning and ending rows, and then just whip stitch these together so that we don't have an opening anywhere, and just make sure you have the ends here and you seam through both layers all the way around to seam the last part together. And once I'm all the way around, I'm just going to put a few extra stitches and tighten, and then I can just run this tail through a couple of stitches to weave it in. So I'll just go like this, and then I can cut the tail, and ta-da! Here we have our little scrunchie. There's another little tail sticking out. So there we go. So there is my little scrunchie made out of 10 stitches in more of a sport weight yarn. And here is my big scrunchie made out of 20 stitches in a worsted weight yarn. Both are 22 inches long before I put the 8 inches long elastic through the center. Well, that wasn't too hard, was it? Now you know how to make a basic scrunchie, and from here on you can start experimenting with different yarns and colors. You can also add different texture by switching from garter stitch to stockinette. Make simple lace textures, switch colors, or so many other fun versions. If you get on the scrunchie wagon with me, please share a photo once you're finished so that we all can inspire each other. You can upload your photo to this website in the gallery. Just click the upload tab below. You can also share your pictures on Annie's Creative Studio Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you do, just don't forget to hashtag Annie's Creative Studio. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Lina Skagersson, and I hope you will join me soon again in another Quick Stitches and Tips episode.